We have a couple of preliminary things. Say that again.
It was a recording, so you may welcome everybody. We are recording this session of the main groups as well as the breakout rooms. If you prefer not to have your face shown, you are welcome to turn off your camera. But we'd thank you so much for being here. Back to you, Dan.
Total silence.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment.
There. Sorry about that. You should never give old people the opportunity to mess things up, because I'm good at that. So I do want to welcome you again. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Art Harrington, who has a description of some polls that are going to be happening as we get started.
Good morning. We want to ask you to participate in 4 quick polls this morning, and I'm launching the first one of those now. You see it on your screen, I believe. How many outbounds is your district preparing to send for this 2022-23 school year? It's a single choice. If you let us know how many you're sending, we'd appreciate that. Give us a little feel for what's happening amongst our districts.
All right, again, welcome. We are really happy that you've taken a good portion of your Saturday to join us. We are probably dealing with people that have been involved with Youth Exchange before, but the past 2 years have produced some real challenges. And now that we're kind of beginning to look at reigniting exchange, it's a good time to get together on one level to just talk about some things that are related to exchange, but also to hear from people whose lives have been really impacted by the exchange experience. A lot of us, at least I, am kind of dealing with inertia. Really involved with exchange up till 2 years ago. And then we've been on hiatus for 2 years. And then you look at how busy we were at the time that we were doing exchange. It's kind of easy to think, maybe I don't want to do that again. So I'm looking forward to being reminded of those people who've been on exchange and how our lives were exchanged, our own lives are changed by exchange, as our districts were changing the lives of all the students that came to us. So to start this morning, we have a special guest. His name is Zachary, or Zach Anderberg. He is a recent graduate of West Point, and as you can see on your program, he's going to tell us how Youth Exchange changed his life. So Zachary, it's
can we finish the polls first, Dan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they were going to be sitting behind. And
okay, here's the results of that first poll, and you'll see that we have the largest percentage out there that are sending 1 to 5, and then we have, as you can see, the other numbers that appear here.
Art, I was unable to check more than 25. Maybe I don't know how to do it, but I tried.
Okay, sorry about that. Must be a malfunction, but you have more than 25. That's great.
I believe 50-20 also is sending more than 25, and so same issue.
Okay, the second poll, how many inbounds in your district are you planning on hosting for this 2022-23 school year? And remember, if you are one of the leaders, you're not able to put in an answer there if you're one of the co-hosts. Okay, if everybody has had a chance to respond here, we're going to show you the results of this second poll. And interesting. All right, we're going to then launch the third one here. And this one asks, how many short-term exchanges is your district planning for the summer of 2022? Looks like the majority of you are not planning one this year. Let me end the poll and share the results. Okay, now this final poll is a very personal answer from you, and it can be one, it's a multiple choice. You can add multiple answers here. As a Rotary Youth Exchange program leader, what aspects of the program cause you to continue to serve in its leadership? And you can check more than one. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and show you the results, and this interesting results. I'm surprised that somebody picked the completing the paperwork and the testing.
Right.
Okay, back to you, Dan, and to Zach.
All right. And again, my apologies for jumping over the top of that. But just looking at that last poll, I certainly can agree with the first two as far as working with exceptional youth, both inbound and outbound, and then the impact that the program has on really everybody who participates in exchange. But I did, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things we're looking at right now is inertia. It's been a long time since we've done the program, at least most districts, and coming back and getting our people, including ourselves, re-energized to do the work that's required. I think when you're in the middle of it, you just keep doing it because you keep doing it. And exchange isn't linear. It's like a wheel, and it just keeps turning and turning and turning. And you jump in at the new point for the new year while you're wrapping up the old year and dealing with the ROTEX as they come back. So it's a little hard to jump out if you want to jump out. The whole world made us jump out, and you kind of take a breath and go, is this something that I still want to do? And for most of us, the answer is yes. As we hear from our students from years past, people that we either hosted or were part of our district who have really become part of our own families and part of our own experience. So I think most of us say, let's do it again. But I really like the timing of this conference as we look at our program, the program of other districts within our zone. And it's called Igniting Youth Exchange, and I think that's probably a good title. Part of it feels like we're reigniting youth exchange. And as I said it to our planning meeting, it's a little bit like the commercial several years ago for cornflakes, where it said, taste them again for the first time. That's kind of where we are with exchange. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Zach Anderberg as a prime example of the beauty of exchange, all of the things that exchange can bring into a person's life. So Zach, take it away.
Thank you, Dan. First off, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you and share with you just a portion of my life that has literally led to my success. I went to Cochabamba, Bolivia in 2012 to 2013. And prior to going, there were numerous things about the world that I didn't understand. I didn't understand the importance of working with other people, working with people specifically outside of my country. I didn't understand how a cultural environment would enhance my ability to understand the world that we live in. And I didn't know prior to what my dream was in life anymore. All I knew is that it was a step that I wanted to take to kind of separate myself from the situation I experienced in high school. To give a little bit of background, I moved to Brookings when I was 9 years old, and I got adopted by my aunt and uncle. And coming to Oregon was just like how it felt when I went to South America. It was a cultural shock for me. I weighed 144 pounds and I had manners, and that was different. It made me different from a lot of the kids that were in my schools. So I experienced bullying. I felt ostracized, and situations during high school were exacerbated when I had to quit the football team due to an injury. And so my original dream was, go to college and play for the Oregon Ducks, because I don't think any high school male, for the most part, doesn't dream of playing in some sort of upper or higher level sport for the most part. But when that was taken away from me, I had to determine what it was that I was going to do, because I was in a very dark place. And I reached out, I was sitting in class one day in high school, in my Spanish class, and we had a group of visitors who were doing a vocational exchange from the Rotary Club, and they were from Italy. And they were speaking to us about the program, about exchange, and that caught my attention because I saw it as a way to do something that other people in high school weren't doing or weren't comfortable to do. I was willing to be uncomfortable. And so I went and I spoke to Miss Coacher, to Jerry, or Miss Livingston, excuse me. And she told me about the Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. And so I found out that I needed to submit the packet that day. And so I filled it out and I went in, and that's when I first met Charlie Coacher, excuse me. And I reiterate it numerous times, but I kind of look at it like this. I reached out to someone and I was asking them for help, for assistance, and they had no reason to give it to me, but Charlie was willing to give it to me. He was willing to fight to help me get that packet filled out. He literally called and got me interviewed that day, and I got approved to go to RYLA. And that's really where my journey began with Rotary, and eventually to leading to youth exchange. I was able to go to RYLA, and for the first time I was able to identify a flaw that I had, and that's that I wasn't comfortable with who I was, because I was trying so hard during that time to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to be a jock, a popular kid, I guess. And instead of focusing on what was really important, because I wasn't conscious of it yet, I was so heavily focused on that. But I made a very big decision when I was on the bus going to RYLA, that I was going to, for the first time, express myself, really express myself and who I was. And RYLA was my chance to develop key leadership skills that even today I practice with the numerous soldiers that I'm in charge of. But the exchange set me up foundationally to understand numerous things about life. It gave me a dream, and it taught me what I wanted to do for myself and for the people around me. It taught me about the potential, or how we can build a better world through working together, through interdependence. So going to Bolivia, it was a crazy moment for me, because when I went, I didn't speak Spanish at all. And I remember when I first got there, my flight had got canceled in Miami, so they had to reschedule my flight, and I flew from Miami to Santa Cruz de la Sierra. And when I got there, I had to wait in the airport, and that was my first, oh no, what have I done? I can't speak Spanish, and I don't understand what anyone's saying, and everyone's looking at me. And I had to sit in one of the rooms while my host father was trying to figure out the English that I just sent him, to recognize that there was a problem. Google Translate helped us work through that one. And I'm sitting there in that office waiting, and eventually they get my ticket, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, maybe I made a mistake. But I mean, there's really no turning back now. Let's see what this can do. And so I got on the plane finally from Santa Cruz, and I flew to Cochabamba. And when I got there, as I'm coming out of the airport, I saw a family that I'd only seen pictures of through through the collection of open source intelligence on Facebook. And I walked out of the airport and I saw my host family, and they had a sign that said "Bienvenidos a Bolivia." And my host mom immediately started speaking to me in Spanish, expecting me to, like reciprocate greetings. And the only thing I could say is "Hola," and that was it. And when we got in the car, she was rattling off lines. I'm assuming, looking back on it now, and with my knowledge of Spanish, she was talking about getting me ready for school and getting me all the clothes that I needed. But my sister, my host sister, she turned around and she spoke to me in English. I'm like, oh yes, you're gonna be my best friend for the next few months. And so once we got home, this is where my first life-changing moment happened on exchange. It happened within the first week. My host mother was down in the kitchen, and I came down because I could hear her in there. It sounded like she was crying, so I wanted to check and make sure that she was all right. And I went down in there in the kitchen, and she's got tears going down her face. And I using what little Spanish I had attained in those days, and I asked her, "Are you okay?" And she told me no, and she spoke to me with one word at a time. She's like, "My son, I miss him." And she kept it very simple. And I told her I had to write it in Google Translate for that first conversation, but I wrote it, "I hope that I can be your son while I live here, so that you don't have to miss yours so much." And she read what I had wrote, and she gave me a hug, and we both cried together. And that was just such a powerful moment, and I think back on it all the time, because I had already kind of sort of known it from getting adopted, but I knew it in that moment that a family is not necessarily one that you're born into, but one that is willing to accept you and love you for who you are, regardless of your inadequacies, your shortcomings, your abilities. They love you, and they're willing to nourish your growth. And that moment there really captured my whole experience in Bolivia. Because going forward, I had to rely so heavily on my friends in school to help me learn Spanish and get me up to speed where I could, excel. And eventually I got to the point where I was able to participate in the high school there and actually do my classes. And I was relying on my family in school too. It wasn't just my family at home, but my teachers were my family, because at the end of the day, they were just happy to see that I was engaging in the work there, that I wasn't above it, and that I was willing to work hard and give them that energy, since they were putting so much energy into being patient with me. And that progressed. As I was progressing, I went into my second family, and it was, I finally had all of these tools where I could I could contribute, where I could actually give to people, to actually serve as an ambassador, to help. I was able to I walked the streets some days, and I would just sit down next to the people that were sitting on the streets and talk to them. And, even if it was just small little manual acts or acts of manual labor, I'd help them out. And I could speak to them, and they'd teach me. And really, the city in itself became my family. And when I left and I came back, I can kind of relate to how many of you probably have felt. Is, you come back, when exchange students come back, I'm sure it's difficult to really realize the investment that you've made in them. And that's because all of us are just coming off of this life-changing moment, and all of the changes that have occurred within ourselves are not necessarily visually present in that moment. So when we go in, for example, I went in to share with the Brookings Club my experience. There was no way of knowing what long-term effects having or going abroad would have on my life. All that Charlie knew was that I was thinking about either going to community college or going into the Army, and he wasn't too thrilled about me going into the Army because he was afraid that it would change me from being who I am. But there was no way to look at me in that moment and say, wow, Rotary really set me up for the path that I eventually followed. Because coming back, I still hadn't had the time to reflect on it. And I still, even today, continue to reflect on it. It taught me the importance of chasing after something big or something bigger, and not being afraid of what's uncomfortable or unknown. And that's why I decided to join the Army. It gave me my direction for what I wanted to do with my life. So I became a cryptologic linguist, because I wanted to continue learning languages, because I recognize the importance of being able to communicate with someone in their own language. And I learned that when I speak to all of you in English, I reach at the most profound parts of your memory, because most of your memories have been shaped or formed by your language, and your language is your culture. So when I speak to others in their native language, I connect with them almost immediately, because I'm able to capture their memories, their culture in our conversation. And by going into the Army, I knew I'd have that opportunity to continue to develop my skills in language. And that's exactly what happened. I went to DLI. I studied French there. I got an associate's degree from the Defense Language Institute, and I graduated with honors. And then, because I had French and Spanish, they decided to send me to Vicenza, Italy. And that was the original dream. I wanted to go to Italy, because I had seen the vocational exchange personnel come in from Italy. I really wanted to go there, but I couldn't. So I ended up going to Italy in the Army, and it was like my life was coming around to fulfill things that I desired in the past. And when I got there, I did the same thing I did when I got to Bolivia. I immediately did what I could to immerse myself. Whereas a lot of other people, other Americans, that being soldiers in this case, were very closed-minded. I had an open mind. I was prepared to receive the culture, embrace it, and become a part of it instead of trying to isolate myself or individualize myself as an American. I wanted to work as a collective group. And I self-taught Italian and then Portuguese as well. And I was able to use my language skills to assist on numerous exercises where we were working with multinational or international partners that we have. And I really was able to take the lessons I learned from Rotary and from my exchange and be a true ambassador for the Army as an organization. I helped my battalion and brigade commander reestablish relationships with the 17th Engineer Parachute Regiment in France, so that we can conduct jumps together and jump out of planes together. I know some of you are probably thinking that's crazy, but it's really fun. And then I was able to, from my performance, I received a recommendation from my battalion commander to go to West Point. And when I went to West Point, it was a long process to get in, but it was a dream that I had had for such a long time, listening to my adopted father talk about how he wished he would have finished the prep school. I was finally fulfilling something that my father wasn't able to. I was able to kind of step out of his shadow and become my own man. But getting to West Point, I studied Arabic and Persian. I dual majored in Arabic and Persian with the cyber engineering minor. And because of my experiences abroad, I continue to expand my cultural awareness and refine my empathy for the people that live in the world that we're constantly interacting with. I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I think there's some things that I've been thinking about I'd really like to capture to kind of end this out a little bit.
That'd be great. Thank you, Zachary. Just
Yeah.
about 2 more minutes would be great. Thank you so much.
I'm rambling a little bit. I want to end this a little bit. So some things I really wanted to capture. I understand that a lot of people might be a little deflated, and it's really difficult being that I have not experienced the same frustrations as many as you, excuse me. But I do understand the frustration of not being able to see the fruits of your labor, or not see things come to fruition. So the one thing I would encourage all of you to do is to hold on or maintain your endurance and continue to invest in people, because, you know, I don't know that I could say with certainty that I'd be here where I'm at today if it weren't for Charlie and Jerry, you know, members of a Rotary Club saying, you know, we want to invest in you and we want to help you get where you want to go. And even if you don't know where that is, we want to give you the foundation so that you can work and build something. You know, it's really difficult sometimes when you're a teenager to express gratitude, but I cannot express enough gratitude for, as an adult, for the experiences that Rotary and all the members that have served in it have created for numerous people throughout the entire world. So I hope that y'all can find it in yourself, the strength you need to continue forward supporting students, because you might meet one that's like me, or one that, you know, might not produce as much like in terms of results, long-term results, but that shouldn't restrain you from investing in them, or restrict you from investing in them. It's better to give all that you have than it is to put your head on the pillow at night knowing you had stuff left over. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Zachary, or Zach. We didn't even talk about how you went from that to the academy. And just a real quick question, how did you, where did the academy come in? Was that after you started your Army service, or after DLI, or before?
So what happened is I wanted to go to the academy, and since I got adopted, my dad used to talk to me about how he had regrets of going to the prep school. And I told my dad, or my dad would always finish that conversation out with, I don't have any regrets because I ended up with you and your brother. And so I grew up from 9 all the way through the age of 18 with that in the back of my mind. And once I went abroad, it was really when I was in Bolivia that I decided, okay, I know what I'm going to do when I get back, and I'm going to take this step. I'm going to go to the academy. But I didn't have really strong grades coming out of high school because I had to push to get my junior and senior year done so that I could go on exchange. And so what I decided was that I think the best way to go about it is to enlist and gain experience at the lower levels, so that when I am a leader, I'll come from a place of understanding and experience when I'm directing people. So that was, I made the decision abroad. In summary, I made the decision abroad, and I followed through on that and went to the academy.
Excellent. I think that we could talk with you the entire morning and not waste any of our time. I so much appreciate everything that you said. I'm really glad that it's recorded, because some of the things that you said are sound bites that we can absolutely use, not only in re-energizing ourselves, but also reaching out to students who are just thinking about exchange and maybe coming from a place that they don't feel like they're completely set up to do it. And then you're the example of how incredibly powerful that can be. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, and at this point, we're moving to kind of a continuation of where we've been with Zach, with ROTEX folks. And I like the group that we have been presented with, because it goes from exchanges that started in 1980 to an exchange that started with my list in 2015. So we have a pretty good range. Rather than inserting myself in a lot of this, I'm going to just turn it over to them in sequence for about 7 or 8 minutes a piece to talk about their experience, what they learned, and what they're doing now. And then I hope there'll be time at the end of this for questions. So if you have questions of them, go ahead and put those in the chat room, and we'll try to address those at the end. I'm not going to guarantee that will happen given our tight frame, but we'll try. So our first ROTEX person is Laureen Murdoch, who went to Austria in 1979 and 1980. So I'm going to turn it over to her at this point. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope, I'm assuming you can hear me. Okay, I'm seeing heads nod. Thanks. So I grew up in Central Texas, and where I grew up was a farming, ranching community, very small high school. And I, a little bit like Zach, although Zach's story, Zach, I had to turn my video off so I could go get a Kleenex. That was just beautiful. And I'm grateful for the effect that the program had on you. But I applied to be an exchange student my senior year of high school because I was really turned off by what seemed to me at the time as a very provincial place with very little worldview, very few dreams other than being a jock or a cheerleader and getting married, which was, I just felt like there was so much more to life than just that. So I applied to be a Rotary exchange student to Europe, somewhere in Europe, especially a German-speaking country, because I came from a German family. I'd heard German spoken in the home by my grandparents. I'd heard their stories, my father's stories of living in Germany after the war as a service member. So I wanted that experience. And District 5840, New Braunfels, Texas, was kind enough to accept me and send me to Linz, Austria, which it was an absolute dream for me. For kids of the 80s, I don't know if you remember Billy Joel's song, Vienna Waits for You. I was convinced he wrote that for me because that's, I went to Austria. I was so excited. I wanted to be there so badly. My family had hosted an exchange student from Yugoslavia for a year prior to my going. He's now from Slovenia, since that country has broken apart. And he became a member of our family. He is still a brother to me, an uncle to my kids. And that was one of my expectations, was I was going to go and become a member of a family. And that wasn't really the experience I ended up with. And I'm not criticizing my host families. They were good to me, very good to me. But it was an arm's length situation. And so I had to sort of readjust that sort of thing. And my German, I had some rudimentary German for sure, but you go from being a toddler to being an adult. I mean, you go from speaking in little sentences and everybody giggles to the point several months down the road where people begin to sort of see you as an adult with credible ideas, as opposed to just this funny little thing that utters funny phrases, which is kind of how I started out. And I was going to mention too, now that I have been through the exchange program in terms of hosting, bringing students in through Rotary as an adult, I see now that my host families back then were probably, they were Rotarians that were probably pressured, to take a student. Look, we've got this kid coming, we need a home. 3 months, that's all we're asking, And I wish it wasn't quite that way. I wish we had more families like Zach's, because that just sounds like the ideal experience. And I think we do have some, certainly. But anyway, But to be honest, I wanted to be in Europe so badly at the time. I was so excited to be there that it sort of didn't matter. I mean, I was there and I wanted to experience everything I could, from walking to school every morning to going and buying fresh bread for my host family before school, to, swimming with in the pool at the school I attended with kids that were 3 or 4 years younger than me. I wanted the whole thing, and it was amazing. It was eye-opening, and more than anything else, it was opening. I felt like doors and windows in my life were opened. I saw different perspectives. I understood that people thought differently because they came from different experiences. I was taken out of my provincial world, which was, the USA is the best country in the world and there is no other place. And everybody wants to come here because we're the best, to going, well, not everybody thinks that way. And there's good reason to see it differently. And that's all good. Those perspectives weave together in a pattern and a rug that, that changes, the pattern changes, the colors change over time. But looked at in a certain way, it's all very, very beautiful if you're willing to see it that way, if you're willing to enjoy the color variation and the fabric variation. So it definitely, my experience opened me. I loved how Zach said that I continue to understand and reflect on the experience I had. And when you said that, I was like, yeah, because it's true. You never forget that. It is, it's a cornerstone. It becomes a cornerstone of your life. You reflect on different experiences, and they take on a different tenor as you grow older. You see things a little differently. I continue to learn from that exchange process. So, and I think, for me, I loved your story, Zach, about your experience with your host mom. Like I said, I had to turn off the video and go cry for a second because that was just beautiful. For me, it was more, my most significant experience, I think, was being on a train, and I fell into conversation with a gentleman on the train. And at some point he asked where I was from. And I said, well, can you guess? And he didn't guess America. I think he guessed Belgium, and then the Netherlands. But I was so proud that for that moment in time, I was not a child of America. I was sort of a child of the world, if you will. I had melded myself enough into the culture that I fit in. And that was a huge experience for me.
Deep apologies, Lauren.
Yeah,
like
I think
one minute.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to have time for questions. Thank you so much, because that really does piggyback very nicely on what Zach said. Our next speaker is Alexis Screen. She's in my district, a good friend. I've known her for nearly ever. And so she's up next. You're on, Alexis.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Alexis Screen. I'm from Eugene, Oregon. District 5110, grew up on the Youth Exchange Committee. Both of my parents were country liaisons. I was a host sister 19 times before I went on exchange. Well, a couple of them were after my exchange, I guess. So I always knew I wanted to go on exchange. I spent my 13th birthday at my first RI convention in Calgary. My parents met there. I actually got sick, and so they were in the elevator at the pre-convention and met a doctor from Brazil. He came up to my room, took care of me. Later, he came back for he came to Oregon with his wife for my high school graduation, and I applied for exchange my senior year. So he was here for my graduation, and I got sent to Ecuador. So I was in Quito, Ecuador with one host family for the entire year, which we know can be either a good thing or a very bad thing. It can make or break your exchange. But luckily, my host family was amazing. I lived in this building where it was my host family, my aunts, uncles, and cousins on the top floor, aunts, uncles, and cousins on the bottom floor, cousins who were going to college in a house in the back. We had family lunches every Sunday up on the roof. I did not speak Spanish when I got there. And my host sibling, one of my host siblings, was in a bilingual school, and he would try to speak English to me, and my host dad would get really angry with him, be like, stop it, stop it, stop it. She needs to learn Spanish. And I would get upset with him, being like, come on, just let him help me. But thankfully, because he did that, I did learn Spanish. And now I teach at a dual immersion school. I teach half the day in Spanish. Similarly to Lauren, one of my, I think, coolest accomplishments was the year I went back to Ecuador after my exchange, and I was helping with a Rotary eye clinic at the coast, interpreting for cataract surgeries. And the nurses from the hospital asked me where I learned my English instead of where I learned my Spanish. So I said, oh, in Quito. And that was really cool. But my favorite part about Rotary is just the friendships and how it really does make the world so much smaller. We talk a lot about once you know somebody and where they come from and their culture, we have so much more in common than differences. And it's really hard to go to war with people that you know and love. And I think somebody, maybe it was Charlie, put it in the chat, that one of my favorite parts of Rotary Youth Exchange is building world peace and just those connections. I have been back to Ecuador 30 times. This summer will be my 31st trip back in July for my 20th high school reunion. I go back every year. I've been back for weddings, funerals, sadly, new babies. My host parents came to visit me here, my whole host family. My parents have both since passed away. My parents from here in Oregon, they were able to go to Ecuador 3 times. And my host family, actually, we planted a tree, excuse me, with my parents' ashes at their house. And so, like Zach said, it's your chosen family. My family is so much bigger because of Rotary. sorry, I'm a little bit emotional, and I'm also on some pain pills. I had surgery last week. Dan, you want to help me out and give me a question?
Well, I just, we'll come back to it later, but we're on a time crunch, but I do want everybody to kind of come back and talk about social media influence on Exchange compared to a time when there was no social media to today when kids are, we tell them to try to get off of social media and they're on it, 2 or 3 times a day with their family back home. So just think about that and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
And, again, you're a hero for showing up 5 days after major surgery. So thanks, Alexis.
That's okay. Like I said, going back to visit has been a big thing, but also international conventions, meeting all of our friends from around the world that we work with. I'm on the Youth Exchange Committee now and have been for many years since I came back from exchange. Houston will be my 10th international convention. It's one of my favorite parts about Rotary, just getting together with everybody from around the world. One of my sisters that lived with us the year before I went on exchange is from Mexico, and we went down for her wedding. When she got married, she did the father-daughter dance with her dad and with our dad. She came back when he was dying, and I think if you've been a host parent, my story is not unique. There are those exchanges that really become part of your family. So I want to say thank you to any of you who have hosted, who are considering hosting. I know all of us are here because of Youth Exchange. Most of us have been involved already, but if you're not, then I encourage you to host, work with the youth to be able to send people from your district. It really has been the most important thing in my life. My email has been Rotary Barbie since I was 11. It's because I had a big Barbie collection, and all the exchange students growing up on the Youth Exchange Committee, we'd have 20, 30 kids come to my parents' house for a meeting sometimes, and we'd go upstairs and there's a big arch in the Barbie room in the collection, and they'd take pictures under the arch. And a student from Belgium was here, and he went home. I went on exchange to Ecuador about 5 years later, and we're sitting at a meeting with all the exchange students that were in Ecuador. And a kid from Belgium is across the table from me. This is a couple months in, and he's looking at me and he's like, what is going on? He says, wait a second, you're the Barbie girl. And I said, yeah. And he goes, my brother was an exchange student in Oregon, and your picture is on his room, on the wall in his room. I recognize it now. And so that was cool. He and his cousin were both on exchange in Ecuador the same year from Belgium. And then after my exchange, I found a ticket to Europe for $500. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go. That's the other cool thing, is that no matter where we go, we have people that we know and we can hang out with. So I buy a ticket to Europe. I send an email to all the students from Europe who were on exchange with me in Ecuador or on exchange in Oregon previous years. And it ends up, I stay at their house in Belgium for a couple days. And then I went to Spain and Germany, and it was all because I wanted to go to the Shakira concert, and she was only performing in Paris. So there's always a couch to stay on.
Right. All right, thanks, Alexis. We'll come back with questions. Moving next into the most recent decade will be Emily Baker, who went to Taiwan in 2011 and 12.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Emily. I'm originally from Portland, and so I went out from District 5100 to District 3480 in Taipei, Taiwan. I had decided to apply for the Youth Exchange program because I had done some traveling beforehand internationally, but only as a tourist, and I had become friends with a couple of the exchange students in my high school, and so I was able to kind of see talk to them and hear about their experiences and how it is, going to school and living with a family abroad. And so that was really kind of what sparked the interest for me. I wanted to kind of go abroad and see what day-to-day life was like in other countries and how it was similar or different, or, just kind of the run-of-the-mill life that you don't get when you're a tourist. So going into my exchange, I had gone to all the trainings and orientations, but as every exchange student knows, that only prepares you so much, because once you hit the ground, anything can happen. So I just really went into it with an open mind, wanting to try as many new things as I could, meet as many people, take advantage of any opportunity that presented itself. And one of the things that we're always told is that youth exchange will change you. And that was kind of what surprised me most, was how it changed me looking back on it. I gained a lot more confidence. I broke out of my shell. I was very shy before I went on exchange. And it really strengthened my determination and inner strength to, do what I want to do, like not let kind of fears or negativity keep me from doing what I want to do in life. So while I was on exchange, some of the challenges, of course, were the language. I had to learn Mandarin Chinese. I was going from a Portland suburb to Taipei, Taiwan, which is a huge city, a huge population, very, densely populated. I went from my American high school to a vocational school studying mechanical engineering, which was my choice, but it was definitely a change. And kind of like some of the other people have said, I didn't have the closest relationship with my host families, which was a little challenging. It was one of those, they were kind of pressured into it because their son was going on exchange, but they were still good families, and they took me on trips and showed me a lot of things. One memory that I have looking back on my exchange that I kind of think to as a point where I knew that this had been a successful experience for me was when I was able to have a full conversation with my third host mom, who I was the closest with, about our mutual travels to Italy. So I had gone there with my parents before I went on exchange, and she had gone with her family a few years before as well. So we were able to have that, just a casual conversation about where we went, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, future travel plans. And so just having that conversation showed that I had learned enough of the language that I could do that successfully, but that I had also built that relationship with her to kind of break down some of the walls and have that bonding experience. And I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't go on exchange. I just moved to DC. I'm pursuing a job in a field that I've been working for years. So like the first way that it really helped was introducing me to Rotary and all that Rotary has. I've been a Rotaractor, past president of my Rotaract Club. I'm a founding board member of our district's ROTEX. I've been to RYLA, I've been to all these things, and through Rotary, I've been able to meet the Croatian ambassador to the US. I've been able to go to BC for a conference, and all these things that wouldn't have happened had I not gone on exchange and was introduced. But outside of Rotary, my youth exchange experience really molded my university and career paths. My first term, when I was scheduling my classes for that term, I had to get a foreign language requirement satisfied. And so I was looking at the languages that the school offered. And so I was thinking I could go with French, which I'd studied before I went on exchange. I could go with Chinese, which I studied while I was on exchange. But then I thought to myself, oh, they have Russian. How hard can Russian be if I already know Chinese? And that one decision led me to minoring in Russian, doing a study abroad to St. Petersburg in Russia, and helped molded my path to finding US Foreign Service as a career goal. So now I'm actively working on taking the Foreign Service exam and finding ways to join that career so that I can travel the world, promote diplomacy, and really kind of live the values that were instilled in me as an exchange student 10 years ago at this point. So I appreciate all the support that Rotarians give to the program, and I like I said, I was a founding board member of our district's ROTEX, and I'm looking at getting involved in the youth exchange program here in DC as well. So thank you for all that you guys do to support the program.
Dan, I think you might be muted.
I even had a note to tell me to unmute. But again, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, we're just piling impressive people on top of impressive people, and just a great testimony of what Youth Exchange does for young folks. So thank you again, Emily, so much. And stay tuned, and we'll get back to questions in a few minutes, hopefully. So our final group, member of the group is Kylee Mebust. And she went, excuse me, to Austria in 2015 and 16. So as we move to the younger generation, Kylee, you're up.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So it's been amazing to hear from everyone else today. And it's always exciting to hear, you know, the different paths and stories that everyone has with exchange, because no two exchanges are the same. So a little bit about me. I am from suburban or one of the suburbs of Sacramento. And, you know, I was always really satisfied with being monolingual. Like I never thought I would learn another language. That wasn't on my radar until my family hosted an exchange student from Peru in my, while I was in high school. I just saw, you know, all the opportunities that she had through the program, as well as the challenges that she had to overcome. And I was like, you know, I kind of want to do that. So I was pretty open for where I want to go on exchange. I just wanted to learn a new language, and I happened to be sent to Austria as well. And, you know, when we think of Austria, we think of the Sound of Music, we think of Vienna and Salzburg and all these big, you know, European cities. And I was like, yeah, like that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to like sit at cafes and drink my coffee, and it's going to be great in this, you know, cosmopolitan European city. Instead, I got sent to Vorarlberg, which is as far as you can possibly get from any of the cities in Austria. It's like way out in the middle of nowhere. And I had the best exchange year ever because I was in this tiny little village in this very little community, and I could see Switzerland and Germany from my house. So I think one of the big findings that I had from my exchange year is just to go into things with an open mind. And, you know, experiences are what you make of them. If you go into something with, you know, not expecting it to be good, it's not going to be good. But if you kind of, you know, say yes and are open to the situation, then great things end up coming your way. I guess a good example of this was, you know, in my Rotary, or in the Rotary Club in Austria where I was, the area spoke with a very, very strong dialect. And it was difficult for me to learn German at first, just because no one there really spoke German. And I would go to their Rotary meetings and I would sit there for an hour and a half, just like nodding and not understanding a word. But I kept going because I'm like, you know, this is, you know, part of my obligation. I really should be getting to know the Rotary community and just, you know, experiencing this. Even if I'm not understanding just yet, I'll understand one day. And after one of these meetings, my Rotary president ended up driving me home and was talking to me. And he ended up asking like, hey, like, so you know how to hold a camera, and are you doing anything tomorrow? And I was like, well, yeah, I can hold a camera physically. And no, I'm not doing anything tomorrow. Like, what's up? And he's like, oh, I have this event tomorrow. Would you want to film it? It's like a skiing up a mountain kind of thing, because that's what, you know, you do in rural Austria. You ski up mountains. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I could probably help film that. That sounds fun. And he's like, great, the helicopter will pick you up at 8, or like the helicopter pilot. And I was like, what? The helicopter pilot? No, what? So the helicopter pilot did pick me up at 8. My mom back in the US was very mad that I told her about this experience before it happened, because she's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to be worried about you going up in a helicopter. And it ended up being one of the coolest experiences of my exchange, just getting to see the Alps from a tiny 2-person helicopter where I'm hanging out and like filming with a tiny camera. So, you know, this was just reinforcing that, you know, say yes to opportunities because you don't know what else could be coming your way. So upon my return, I, you know, really enjoyed learning German, and I continued that when I, you know, studied at UC Berkeley. So my majors ended up being German and global studies. So this experience was very, very clearly impacted my course of study. And I was also very involved in the Rotary Club on campus, also a past president, past Rotary, or a past district Rotary representative. So that, you know, the exchange really impacted my college experience in those two ways. And it also impacted my career quite heavily. So I got not two, but 3 jobs because I knew German. The first one was just at a library because I could identify German nouns, which apparently is not as easy as it looks. And then another position I got was an internship at the US consulate in Frankfurt, Germany, where I worked in their their front office with the consul general. And then finally, upon graduating college, I worked at the Austrian consulate in San Francisco. And, you know, it really was a magical moment where my exchange came full circle. I have very similar aspirations to Emily that, you know, one day I think I could see myself working for the US Department of State. But for now, I'm going to be, you know, sticking around in San Francisco working in tech policy, as I just recently started a new job working at a law firm. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm excited to have time for questions with the group.
Thank you so much. I mean, you know, you could light a city just with your energy. So thank you for that. What I would like to know, I mean, if people want to jump in on the chat room with questions, I would be very happy to provide those to our panelists. In the meantime, actually, there's one already. It says, Emily, as someone who considered herself a bit shy as an exchange student, what advice would you give those introverted students that struggle with socially connecting with their peers at school?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, a thing I still find challenging even today, past exchange. But I think it's really like getting involved as much as you can. Like, even if you're joining a club and you end up sitting in the back of the room because you're not confident in your language, at least you're there, like engaging with the students, or, you know, finding like one friend at the beginning of your time in the school and saying, okay, you know, can you show me where the cafeteria is? Can you tell me how to order this food? Or, you know, kind of making those small steps at first. And then that'll kind of grow. One thing about, I don't know about the other exchanges, but for mine, I was forced out of my shell a little bit, and that I had to give a monthly report to my Rotary Club in Taiwan in Chinese starting month 2 on my exchange. So that really will pull you out when you have to stand in front of a group of like 30 Taiwanese businessmen speaking a language you barely know, telling them about your week at school. So yeah, it's really initially taking those little steps to like put yourself into the common areas of the house or clubs at school, or even, you know, starting out with other exchange students who are in the same boat, like going and getting food someday, and then just kind of building on that to really pull yourself out of your shell.
Thank you, Emily. If you've been to a NIAN conference, I think you've probably heard speeches or talks about not ignoring introverted students, because on one level, they adjust better to exchange than the extroverted student who wants to be first and fast and funny. Introverted students are used to having to think about what's being said, think about how they want to respond, and then respond. That's not something we extroverted people are good at. We usually think after we speak, but anyway, before other questions come in, actually I do. And and this relates a little bit to what I want to ask you about. It said, what impact does Google Translate have on exchange? But also, I'd like you to talk about, as many potential students are going to be looking at some of these videos, what is your recommendation to a student regarding social media? Anybody can jump in on that.
I think I could start on that question, if that's okay.
Okay.
I think it's really getting that self discipline to not use it as much as possible. Going back in 2011, I think it was a little easier because it wasn't as prevalent. It was, and definitely like it impacted how much homesickness I experienced by, scrolling on Facebook, seeing prom pictures, seeing this and that. So it's really kind of that personal determination. Like I will not go on social media. I will be present in my host family, in my school. I also friended classmates and other exchange students and family members, host family members on my social medias, so that they eventually went from like Oregon news to Taiwanese news just naturally.
Thank you. Lauren, could you address that question a little bit, because you predated most social media, and what was it like? How did you have contact with home, or was that a problem? Was homesickness more of an issue for you because you couldn't contact regularly?
I was so excited to be there at first that homesickness wasn't an issue, but about February, after Christmas is over, and you've kind of gotten into the language enough that it's not new, that's when the homesickness hit. At that time, the host family I was with was really good about saying, look, I think you need to call home. So, that was my contact, was a phone call. But I will say this, the exchange students we've had here in Blackfoot, those who stay off social media really pick up the language so much better and the nuances of English. We had one student who I just adored, but she had a best friend at the high school who was from the same town in Spain that she was from. So you can imagine they were best buds, and they spent the year speaking Spanish. And I later, as I took her to Yellowstone, realized how this was at the end of her exchange, and she really hadn't picked up the language like I guess we'd hoped she had. So, stepping out of the box that that's really the key, I think.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think so. Like, social media was a pretty big thing when I did my exchange. And I just remember thinking back when I'd see like my friends from high school having parties or like having fun without me. And I'm like, oh, how dare they have fun without me being there? So I highly recommend exchange students to try to not be on social media as much, just because it does, it does feel bad when you see people having fun without you and you're like, well, I want to be there too. I will say, on the other side of that, all your friends back home are way more jealous of you than you are of them, because you are off having this amazing adventure elsewhere. And like, I kind of forgot that, and I post my pictures here and there. But looking back, just seeing my social media feed of like my time in Austria just gives me really fond, I have very fond memories looking back at it. I also say social media has been great since my exchange, because I get to like keep up with my host brothers and my friends from high school. Like, one of my Austrian friends from high school is actually flying to San Francisco tonight. So I haven't seen her in like 6 or 7 years, and we are finally meeting up again after all this time. And just because we've been able to stay in contact via social media. So, it's kind of got pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of fed you all a question earlier, and I don't know if any of you thought about it and have an answer to it, but we've all been dealing with COVID for the past 2 years, and some of us not so well. Is there anything that your exchange experience provided that helped you do better than the rest of us?
I think for me, like, one little thing was moving to seeing family in a virtual format wasn't new for me, because I had done that on exchange. We Skyped, we, did holidays over Skype. So I think in that way, it wasn't like as much of a shock to be like, oh yeah, I can't see them this year, but over Zoom, over Skype, it's better than nothing, kind of thing. So I think in that way, it was a little helpful.
Thanks, Emily. Alexis.
A lot of things that we heard in training before I went were like, adapt or die. You have to be flexible. So I think just knowing to adapt to the situation and being flexible, it's like, whatever's happening, we're just gonna go with it. And I remember those words of advice when it was like, I went to teaching online during COVID, and it's like, oh, this is just what we got to do. So teaching students that are going on exchange to be flexible and rolling with the punches, right? And saying yes and adapting has been, I think, a leg up in
anyone else?
all of that.
I guess for
Kylee.
me, with the pandemic, we weren't able to, see and interact with our friends as much as we were used to. And as a hyper extrovert, this did remind me a little bit of my exchange time because I couldn't communicate with the people around me as much as I'd like to and in the way I would like to. So I guess I had built a lot of resilience in those times where I had to do things on my own or, find activities for me to do at home to entertain myself when I didn't have my social connections yet. So just relying on that old resilience from there was helpful.
Zach, I see that you're still on it. Do you have any reactions or any questions or comments about the last 40 minutes?
What specifically?
No, I just, we're talking with a group of ROTEX. We've talked about a variety of subjects, and I just wonder if there's anything that you would like to provide input on that we've talked about.
I actually have been thinking about this problem a lot lately too, in terms of social media. And I think that it has benefit if you utilize it correctly, right? Because I think one thing that you're going to find, because I notice it in some of the young soldiers that come in, is their inability to express themselves socially directly. And I think that's one of the benefits of exchange is that you have to in order to learn the language. But what I would say is, rather than trying to tell a teenager not to use something, offer them creative solutions on how they can continue that pattern of life that they enjoy, but continue to be engaged in their environment. So for people who really have to have that social media, I would say maybe create a new Facebook account. It's not that difficult. Generate a new email, put it in there in Facebook, and then only add people from the country that you're living in. And it's a forcing function for introverts who, might not want to directly engage with someone socially. And it's a tool for extroverts to coordinate events. And I know that might be an extra step, but it's an idea. And I think that's really what you got to look at is, how can we utilize social media platforms as a tool to exchange? Because if we continue to, you'll slowly, gradually start to see a disconnect from the younger generations and the older generations. So as people with experiences, we have to think about how to generate ideas that support those younger generations who have different practices rather than immediately dissuading from it, because it'll teach you to type. It can help you to learn how to write. I've gotten better in Spanish and French and Italian, Portuguese, all by typing them out. So it's just finding creative, innovative ways to remain engaged in exchange and still have the comfort of some of the tools that we use on a daily basis.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate what you said about that, because I think we tend to get stuck in what we've always done, and modifying it to the current world is a good idea. Kylee, you get the last word.
Oh, I just wanted, it was a follow-up about how social media also can be a tool. I know for me, sometimes when my Austrian friends would say their name really fast, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what your name is. So I'd be like, oh, can you add yourself on my phone to my Facebook or my Instagram? And then that way I'd actually get to, see their name typed out. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what you, oh. So, there are some pros.
All right. Any last word from anybody? Somebody who's waiting for me to ask a question that I didn't. Alexis.
Also, just for Rotarians on youth exchange committees, the big thing is also warning parents and families in the trainings before you sending their student that it is not okay to be WhatsApping them every hour of the day just because it's accessible now, and how hard that's going to be. But it's really important that they, let their student communicate with them. And we also suggest making a blog for sharing their information, and then they can start writing it in the language that they're learning in their new home. And that way family back home can still read and stay up to date with what they're doing, but it's not interfering, and they're not thinking all constantly, well, what's going back at home? What's going back at home? But families need to know also. Don't text them all the time.
Yeah, there's a question or a comment that says parents can be a bigger problem with social media than the students, and I think that's true. We're out of time. I knew this was going to go way too fast, but I so much appreciate your perspective and your preparation and sharing with us. I think you're going to be showing up at a lot of committee meetings and introductions to students to let people know what exchange looks like. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back to Chris for explanation about the breakouts.
Great, thanks so much, Dan. Let me go ahead and spotlight myself. Okay, so we are exactly right on time. So thanks so much, Dan, for facilitating that. We are going to now move into breakout opportunities. There are 6 breakout options. In a moment, I am going to open up the breakout rooms. You will have the opportunity to choose what breakout session you are interested in or that you want to go to. These are going to repeat. So there will be a, just for everyone's knowledge, the breakout session 1 will be from 10:20 is our Pacific time. So 5 minutes from now until 11:05 Pacific time, and then 11:10 Pacific to 11:55, and we'll come back together for closing. So the breakout sessions will repeat so that you get a choice of 6 topics. I am going to go ahead in a moment, put those topics in the chat for everybody. And then in a moment, I will open up the breakout rooms, and then you'll have an opportunity to select the breakout room. In the event that you are unable to select your own breakout room, please send me a message in the chat, and I will do my best to get you to where you are would like to go. So let me add these in the chat real quickly. 1, 2. Count 3. Okay, and then I'm going to add 4, 5, and 6, just a moment, and then I'll open up the breakout rooms. There's 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so you have again 6 options. These options will repeat, and so I am going to now open up the breakout rooms, and those individuals that were had our hosting, I already pre-populated you, so you should be able to go directly to your room. Just a reminder for our room hosts, that one of you needs to hit record so that we are able to capture the enriching conversations that I'm sure you all have. So again, the breakout rooms are now open. If you are unable to move yourself to a breakout room, there should be a little thing at the bottom of your screen that says breakout rooms. I think it's under either more or a breakout room option will appear. If for some reason you do not see that, please let me know and put in the chat where you would like to go. So we will start those in about a minute at 20 after the hour. So thank you, everybody. Okay, so at this point, I see Carol, Charlie, Art, Mayumi, Atom, Deborah, Nance, Michael, Cindy, Michelle, Cindy, Donna, Robert, Jeanette. Apologize if I butchered any of those names. I have not been assigned to a breakout room. So if you are unable to assign yourself, please let me know and I will, or you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and I will share with you. Debbie, I am going to put you in the short-term exchange.
Chris, I went into my breakout room and my speaker or my microphone doesn't work. Should I just try to go back?
Yes, I mean that's odd. I don't know why that would happen. Okay, Jeanette, I'm putting you in short-term exchange. There you go.
I don't know why mine is not clicking in. This is Carol.
Carol, where would you like to go?
Building a community culture would be great, but it doesn't really matter. There we go.
Okay. So the remainder of you, do you have a preference or I can just manually assign you, randomly assign you to a group?
Short-term exchange or there's room number 6. What was that?
And I'm sorry, who's speaking?
This is Atom from Toronto.
Okay, yes. And he wanted to go to the New Generation Service Exchange 6?
New Generation or short-term exchange, either one of those.
Okay. You will send you there for the first time.
Zach, could you send me back to hosting?
So you, Dan, you're already there, so you have to go and manually. Is there a breakout option for yourself?
I thought that I had left that one, but apparently not. Let me try.
It still shows that you are there.
Okay, I'll try to get back to that. Thanks.
This is Mayumi.
Hi.
Hi. I like to be in the short term.
Okay, short term. I will send you there right now. Short-term exchange. Debbie, where did you said you wanted to go where? Oh.
Yeah, short-term exchange would be great, or the new gen.
Okay, I just sent, you should just gotten an invite to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, just got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm out of the room. I'm sorry. Can you, when you told about it, could you put me in 5 if there's room?
Certainly. Who's speaking?
I'm sorry. It's Michelle Considine.
Okay. And putting the clubs in the driver's seat?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
We're there. Dan, I'm going to try putting you in the waiting room.
Okay, that'll be good because I'm not navigating this very well.
So I have to go to my participants list. And we're gonna draw co-host. Put in waiting room. Okay, and then I'm going to make you.
Now I have an option to join a breakout room.
Okay, now go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's try that. Thank you.
You're welcome.